Yes, it's happy times and places where I, Toby Hadoke, do commentaries on Doctor Who episodes spurred on by a special guest who's chosen a story and their favourite things about that story, and I have to see if I can guess what those favourite things are.
My name is David Quantick. I'm a comedy writer, mostly. I write other things and I do broadcasting. The story I am nominating is Genesis of the Daleks.
Well, welcome. Veep, Brass Eye, The Day-to-Day, Danger Mouse, The Thick of It, just some of the programmes that David Quantick has contributed to as a writer. And now here he is, contributing to my silly podcast where I get all lovey-dovey about Doctor Who. I make no apologies for accentuating the positive. I'm not blind to Doctor Who's faults. I don't think everything about Doctor Who is marvellous. But I've decided to spend my energies just trying to be positive out there. Of course I'll sit with my mates and slag off, insert name of story here. But that's not what this is. I think it's very easy to go, oh, that's rubbish. So easy. But notice that I remove the credibility of the person saying it by giving them an awful voice. But it's selfish reasons as well, as because I think it's easy to get consumed. I'm sort of going on the back of episode 5 where I went off on a little bit of a tirade about I pulled into Negativeville and pulled up a chair next to Grumpy Socks and failed to hang on to even a basic metaphor. Oh God. Anyway, I'm going to accentuate the positive. And David Quantick is somebody who has made me laugh many, many, many times, always put a smile on my face. So that's what I try and do with this, whilst trying to put positive energy out there. Why not, why not? And we're going to do so with episode 6 of Genesis of the Daleks. I've got to guess what David's favourite thing about it is, but as he's shown, his favourite thing about episode 1, was something that I couldn't possibly have done, because I don't know his friend who he watched it with, and his favourite thing about episode 5 is actually from episode 6. So he's an unconventional kind of guy, but I'm okay with that. We're free as a bird on this podcast. We're not going to be constrained by continuity. We're going to do a Robert Holmes. If it seems good at the time, we're going to do it. And it's episode 6, and I want you to press play in 3, 2, 1. Just for context, if you hear whiz bangs and pops, it's not the Thals outside trying to get in with their bombs. It's fireworks outside, and which my dog Bernard is deciding to counter with growls. I'm not sure it's going to put the fireworks off their exploding. It's not going to make them dull their incandescence, but he's going to have a bash anyway because he's a guard cockapoo. It's part 6 of Genesis of the Daleks, which I've always sort of seen as a bit of an anticlimax. I don't know. It just seems to be sparser, although there are actually more Khaled elite, because Garman's gone off to get his mates who will number more than the 3 guys that he had behind him, and Tom Georgeson, although Tom Georgeson has disappeared. He will not be in this episode. So, oh God, I wanted to do this as a stage play because I had this script in my head, and I gave Carvel a bigger role because I liked him. It's really odd. This is the touch. This is going to be hard pressed to be beaten. But as I say, it means that I'm going to harm my own chances because I already know that David won't choose this because he's chosen it for last week. But it is superb. Tom Baker's intensity is fabulous. And the gravity that he gives it just because of that wonderful sonorous voice of his, the sweat on his face. And as David mentioned in the last wrong episode, it's Sarah Jane who gives the counter argument. We're talking about the Daleks. Oh, she's so good. And she's giving a perfectly rational, and that shot is brilliant. Of the two wires, and then the pulling of the focus. It's a justly lauded moment. It's a brilliant piece of writing, and a brilliant piece of direction. It doesn't throw this moment away. Everything, and this is the beginning of the final episode, and everything pauses for a philosophical discussion. But it's a philosophical discussion upon which the entire drama of this story is based. Are you any better? And I think we have to look at that in terms of the some of the arguments that are being had today. I see many people on my own side, as it were, resorting to great unpleasantness to try and win the argument. And I never think that you, because you're the goodie, can do the things that you don't like that the baddie does, because the baddie doesn't think they're bad. That the person on the other side of the argument is trying to do the thing that they think is best. So if you then go, but I can do this to them because I'm me and they're them, well, you're as bad as them. And that's the really interesting argument that the Doctor has with himself. There is, am I any better than the Daleks? Now, Tom Georgeson has gone, and there's this guy Kravos, who's he's a member of the military rather than the scientists, but who's got this little subplot where Davros goes, I gave you a special heart, he gets a couple of lines, and I wonder if that was originally supposed to be Carvel, and they just went, because it seems odd that, you save having an actor for an episode, but you've got a different actor instead. So I wonder if at some point Carvel was supposed to be Kravos, although then why would that character have been one of the first to turn against Davros if he did give him his special heart? I haven't mentioned the time ring enough. I think I've started to bring it up in one episode. I like the fact that the Doctor's getting all his gear back now. It's just been left in a perspex tuck box. The time ring is a hoary old device that has been so useful for this story. I love in the first Dalek story that the reason they have to go back to the city is not because they're heroes who want to help the Thals save the day. It's because actually they can't leave the planet until they get their thing back. And that opens up all sort of murky. So do you turn these peaceful people into warlike people in order that you can get your door key back, your fluid link back? How do we feel about that? And that's not lazy writing. It's it's there deliberately, and it's this is the moral dilemmas here are deliberately in this to show that in the world of Doctor Who, the goodies have to make quite harsh decisions, and if they make those harsh decisions, how close are they flirting with being who these guys are? Maybe that's the screen grab. I was in an article in somewhere that I read quite a lot. Anyway, it's a great shot of Peter Miles and Michael Wisher. He's got a very gentle voice and a very gentle manner, Dennis Chinnery, and he was an expert on the actor Robert Harlan. And I believe by the end of his life had quite a sort of curvature of the spine thing going on, and was quite in quite a lot of sort of pain and discomfort, but still I think went to signings and things like that. But I think he was, he got a scoliotic thing going on, because of course we all age. I never had the pleasure with Dennis Chinnery, but he seems to have had a decent career and worked with Hartnell and Baker and Colin Baker, from The Chase to Genesis to The Twin Dilemma. That's quite a journey. This is a nice piece of music from Dudley Simpson. I like what he chooses to score the Daleks with. I'm no expert on music. It's funny because there aren't many sort of Dudley Simpson tunes that sort of stand out for their own sake, and I wonder if therefore they're sort of doing a slightly better job. Is that I probably wouldn't choose to listen to Dudley Simpson incidental music for fun, whereas there is other incidental music I will confess I have listened to, and yet actually the music here is quite familiar to my ears because of course it's the accompaniment to the cassette, but it's nicely bombastic, but you're still it's still the visuals that you're mostly noticing. It's that thing about incidental music is like it's like lighting. It's at its best if you don't actually notice it, but it's complementing the stuff that you're seeing. And so here we are. Here we have Bethan and Severin. I've read a thing where apparently Stephen Yardley went looking for a bit of work in a break, and the BBC, and they mistook him for a tramp who'd wandered in because he was dressed as Severin, but he was just, you could do it in those days, knocking on doors, going, "Any jobs going?" Which is apparently, Troughton was never out of work, Patrick Troughton, and you sort of think, oh, that's because he was a respected character actor who, everybody wanted to employ. No, his sons tell me he had to hustle. He wrote letters, he knocked on doors, and again, sort of alluding to what I was talking about last time. I love that little moment between Bethan and Severin where he goes, "I've got to go and be brave," and she goes, "Yeah, but I am going to blow the place up whether you're back or not, because I've only met the Doctor once, I don't know he's the hero of this show," kind of thing. But yeah, Troughton hustled, and sometimes a lot of people get a lot of work because they are very good at the networking side of things. And because I'm not, I've for many years thought of that as a sort of dirty word, but it's a skill. I know I could think of a couple of comedians who are good comics. They and having got the work, they proved themselves and are now mainstays on television. But it's because when they started out, they turned up at all the right gigs and they spoke to the right people, and that is part of the job. And if you're not very good at it, like I'm not, you cannot blame other people who do that. It's just a quite nice moral dilemma, this, for Kravos, who obviously makes the decision to side with Davros. But that just goes to show that behind Davros's bad science, there's also that good science that has benefited people. Davros is lost. I'm getting away. The time ring falls out again. Sorry, that's another time I've started talking about the time ring and not. So this last time getting away. Don't believe it for a minute, but I love Nyder. He's so good. The time ring is unique to this story and just is really, really, really handy. It's a devilishly clever storytelling device because it never gets boring. Sometimes I find Jeopardy, especially in a lot of modern television, is based on two people not having the right conversation, and because of that there's 3 episodes of misunderstanding or not getting to do the right thing, and you go, oh come on, if only you'd done that, this wouldn't have happened. The time ring serves the same sort of purpose of either holding up the plot or keeping people somewhere, or meaning that people have to go back to somewhere, but it's a perfectly plausible thing. They never get careless about the time ring particularly. They're aware of how important it is. They keep telling us it's the lifeline in case we've forgotten that bit at the beginning of episode 1, and every now and again it's either confiscated or falls out and means that our heroes have to do another thing, which then helps us with the storytelling and the plot as it needs to happen, as the writer needs it to happen. And I just think that's a thing of great economy, that without it being annoying, because sometimes things, if not so artfully handled, can be quite annoying. But I think that's nice, and I like this. This is a very doctorish piece of reasoning. I remember thinking this was terribly clever when I was younger, this idea of going, Nyder's not cooperating. Of course he's not. And Sarah, again, articulates that he's telling the truth. But the Doctor goes, no, because Davros, it's high up, and Davros needs you to do it. And again, that's just a nice little piece of reasoning that means we get a little bit of a delay to what they need because, Nyder buys some time by lying, but the Doctor works it out, and it's quite fun to have him work it out. And there we go. And so then we've got the tapes. That actually end up having, no impact on the story at all, except for the fact that they gave us that juicy, glorious cliffhanger. They gave us that bit of the Doctor having to, give stuff away in order that his friends don't get hurt. They did that acting of reacting to the laser very well as well. And it then facilitated the conversation between Davros and the Doctor. So it's all a beautiful jigsaw. And some of the pieces may not seem to be important. They might all just be bits of sky. But actually, if you don't put all those bits of sky in, you don't get such a pretty picture. And the time ring's fallen off, so you've got to stay for the end of the episode. And the end of the adventure. Because at the moment, you think that, politics will win the day. Very naive, Doctor Who. Now, this Thal soldier is John Gleeson, who turns up a bit later. He's a very handsome man. He turns up a bit later in The Seeds of Doom as Charles Winlet, the first of the guys to get infected by the crinoid. And it's a nice little part he's got in that. He's a very naturalistic actor. And he is, I believe, the son of the actor Leon Quartermain. But interestingly, and I think was born John Quartermain. Now, it does say that on IMDb, but I would always say double check. And I have read an article that says that he's the nephew of Leon and Charles Quartermain, but I don't know if Leon Quartermain had another sibling apart from Charles, so he couldn't be the nephew of both. So the jury is out, but he's certainly of the Quartermain clan, and he is certainly... And his son is called Jack Quartermain, so he's certainly a John Quartermain, but decided to call himself John Gleeson as an actor, which is interesting because Leon Quartermain was a very famous actor. So why would you not capitalise upon that? Maybe he wanted to go his own way. There's an article in the paper today about Zoe Ball's son not having access to any of her money because he's being independent and going his own way. So anyway, that's John Gleeson, who plays Thal Soldier. And I've sort of missed the bit that you are insane, Davros. That's a line that I distinctly remember from the cassette. And this is pretty grim. And I sometimes think it's a bit of a compromise when I love the fact that yes, poor old Garman gets his own death, and that shot of Nyder is vile. That it's not just, and then he throws Kravos sort of into the exterminating melee. So for all his iron heart that Davros has made for him, all he has to do is sort of protest and get over. Nyder chucks him into the path of the laser beams. But I always thought it was a bit of a compromise that, one beam could kill lots of people. You sort of want to see each person getting sort of zapped individually, but it actually shows the power of the Daleks in a way, is that they're all bathed, just one shot can wipe out a whole phalanx of middle-aged scientists. But it was nice that Garman at least got his own death, but that's quite shocking. That it seemed to be. I mean, you knew because Davros was tapping his fin, but the Doctor didn't. As far as the Doctor was concerned, politics had won the day. Garman, was gonna make sure that the Doctor completed his mission for the Time Lords. I mean, the Doctor hasn't spoken to Davros since getting knocked out by Nyder, and it just goes to show, Doctor, if you want a job doing properly, you have to do it yourself. And that extermination is really pretty harsh, isn't it? Look, that's a pile of dead people. It's still not, in the great scheme of things, a lot of people. And again, we have to sort of extrapolate, because there's no way that surely can be the whole of the scientific and military elite, because I think that would be a naive understanding of the optimum numbers required. But of course, the Daleks are increasing, which again, and I think if you were making this with an inexhaustible budget, you would be sort of showing the Daleks continuing production or something going on there in the background at this stage. I know we have Davros notice it later on. Doctor's got his big long coat back, very handy for if he breaks his collarbone on location. So now I think what's supposed to happen here, isn't it, is that the Dalek goes over the wires and that causes the explosion. That sort of comes to nothing, as I say. The Doctor just sort of does I've affected their development a bit, but he hasn't destroyed. The blowing up of the incubator room doesn't destroy the Daleks. So despite that big speech, and despite what we see here, which, as I say, the impression is supposed to be given that the Dalek going over the wires completes the circuit. He doesn't complete his mission, and yet there is an explosion here. Yes, he's going to go over it. Yes, that's not just the blowing up of the Dalek. But I like this as well. Is that is that now that's, I'm not sure I buy this, but it's very handy. Of course, there happens to be, just because otherwise how would the Doctor know, or how would our heroes know what has gone on in the main? But it's a good job that, we've got another picture. What's happening there? Harry from Between the Lines is having a very long toilet break. Well, tell him not to come out. Go and rescue him. It's all right. He's going to become the Emperor Dalek. But this is great because at this point, as a Doctor Who fan, you go, well, we know Davros isn't in any of the future stories. This is the earliest Dalek story, so he's going to have to die. And as I think I said at the beginning, there's an argument that he might have been, for everybody's sake, better off staying dead. But then again, it was so exciting. Destiny is one of my first memories. Seeing him come alive there. This is, and I again, this is the Daleks. Laser beams are agonizing. I don't think it's the best death for somebody who's so sort of clipped and straightforward as Nyder. I would have preferred a slightly better staged death. And Peter Miles's death in Doctor Who Silurians is one of the best deaths in the history of the show. But we'll talk to that when I get to that one. Michael McManus records his favourite things about Silurians. The Doctor actually loses his hat there. But it's back on again now. It would have been awful, wouldn't it, if the Doctor had got through that door and the laser beam had gone through and just killed some poor Thal soldier in the background. So there we have it. It's done with great economy. This final episode, the whole thing is, because this is quite an epic story, and it's actually got quite a big cast. It's got a bigger cast than you think, because there are sort of characters that come in and do that little bit and go out again. I think the cast could be more sort of efficiently streamlined, but it does give it a more, actually having Carvel and Kravos actually gives it a broader scope, if you like. And we're not used to it, because we're used to sometimes characters being consolidated to tell the story more efficiently, if you like. And that thing of having, one character into many parts divide one man, or, it's the Henry V thing, isn't it? One person actually represents a whole lot, and you're supposed to extrapolate mentally beyond what can be staged in a small studio with a small cast or whatever. Now, you see, I always thought when he said in the total timescale no more than that, he would sort of click his fingers and going, that time period is the equivalent of that. But he's not. He's being much more literal. So it kind of, at the end, the story sort of goes, well, I've done a thing, but actually it doesn't really matter. So it kind of has its cake and eats it, really. But it's done with such confidence that you accept it. And have pity. Brilliant. I remember as a kid, again, being caught with that, going, he's created these pitiless creatures, he appeals to their pity, and they don't know what it means. That's brilliant. That's, careful of the monsters you unleash. And this is just so quotable. And then here he goes and he takes his time, and in the book it sort of says it's almost like he can't bring himself to do it. but I'm not sure that's clear there. And in the cassette, this cuts off. They go, stronger. We will take our. At the time is right. We will take our rightful place as the supreme beings, our power of the universe. Now, I used to think because on the cassette it goes universe and then goes into the music, and I thought, well, they've had to do that because the screen cuts off and the Dalek doesn't actually say the whole word. It does say the whole word in the actual program, so they just edited it slightly too quickly. So and they also say, well, so you didn't fail the mission. Then he goes, well, actually, because out of great evil will come something good. But that's, you've changed the goalposts there, because that wasn't your mission. Wasn't to decide at the end, well, out of great evil must come something good. Your mission was to stop the Daleks, which we thought you did when you blew up the incubator. So anyway, but it's fine, because that's an interesting philosophical point about Garman's back up to third billing. But yes, out of great evil must come something good. But is that any comfort to the millions of people who die as a result of the great evil? It's, that's the universe that Doctor Who inhabits, which throws up its very own interesting philosophical points. Davros's mask, John Friedlander, great unsung hero of Doctor Who. It's a beautiful mask. So I'm sorry that I kept wanging on about the cassette tape of Genesis of the Daleks. I think it's a great story. Episode 6 worked there for me. As I say, I've always seen it as a bit of a sort of anti-climax. I think it may just be because Carvel disappears, and I've never quite got over that. So if anyone wants to write a short trip, well, it's not a short trip. It's quite a long trip, or there's no loo roll, and he's waiting for somebody to come past. But anyway, I've got to choose my two favourite things, because I choose a favourite thing from episode 6, and then I choose a favourite thing overall. My favourite thing from episode 6 is going to be the touching the wires. I can't not. I could. Or should I try and win this? Well, no, because I won't win it, because I get the point. I get the point for touching the wires for last episode. I've decided that's the rules. And it just seems I've got to be true to myself. The touching the wires scene is a monumentally great scene of Doctor Who. And my thing overall, Duncan Brown's lighting. It's the lighting in Doctor Who often comes in for stick. It's really hard to light videotape drama, to light low budget videotape drama with plywood robots painted in gunmetal gloss paint, moving over a studio white cyclorama, and to actually make it look atmospheric and shadowy and spooky. It's an impressive piece of work in terms of the lighting. So I salute you, Duncan Brown, lighting guy. Sadly, no longer with us. But he is interviewed on the DVD extra, so that was well done by, I think it was actually Ian Levine who made that documentary. Well done, Ian, for getting Duncan Brown in. I think that was an excellent call. The DVDs, we are so lucky that they give us access to these people who are now all gone. Okay. What's David chosen as things 6 and bonus?
Episode 6, and in summary, I've got to say, the plotting of Genesis of the Daleks. It's not just bish bosh cliffhanger, though there are cliffhangers and there are bish boshes. The plotting is beautiful. First of all, they set up this long and familiar war. Then they introduce the fact that the Daleks don't exist yet. What the heck? Not only that, but this is a kind of Nazi society where suddenly the scientists have come to the fore. The scientists are now running things. We're moving away from morality. And then the scientists are themselves outmaneuvered by Davros. It just keeps going, keeps upping the ante. And then the final twist, Davros is killed by his own creations. While Doctor Who is worrying about morality, another morality tale is unfolding in front of him. It's absolutely fantastic. I've been asked to mention a bonus thing that I love about this, and the bonus thing is the creation myth of the Daleks. Because, as with all TV series, and bad news fans, TV isn't real, so they can change things retroactively. There have been more than one creation myths of the Daleks. And this one, which is now, I think, pretty much canon, unless it turns out that Jodie Whittaker was a Dalek again or something like that, is my favourite. And it reminds me very strongly of my favourite Dalek creation myth, which is the one in We Are the Daleks. We Are the Daleks, of course, was a short story in the 1973 Doctor Who special, which you bet when I was 12 I bought. And it's Terry Nation again saying, oh, the Daleks, yeah, I've just realised they're not from here, they're not from Skaro, they're actually from the planet Amaron, and they're actually humans transplanted there as part of an experiment. So we are the Daleks. That really did my nut in. So Genesis of the Daleks, one of the all-time great Doctor Who's. I'm glad I got to nab it.
Well, we'll get to David's plug for his book that he's got coming out. By the time this episode goes out, it will be out, and hopefully you'll have listened to the plugs for it on all the previous instalments of Happy Times and Places Does Genesis of the Daleks. David's absolutely right about the plotting. The plotting is superb. From the time ring to the shifting morality play, and yes, the fact that Davros is ultimately the cunning Davros, the hugely intelligent Davros, the Davros who is amoral and in control all of the time, neglects to notice that he has been the architect of his own destruction, which is, dramatic irony and also a sort of moral payoff, if you like. It's a cruel morality. It's the morality of the real world in many ways. But all the morality in this is sort of compromised. The Doctors too, the Time Lords. Hang on, who's decided that they're in charge? I always think about that when. There are certain countries who are allowed nuclear weapons and certain aren't, and we're essentially saying because you can't handle the nukes. You go, well, who are you to say who can't handle it? But then again, we haven't used them. But then again, we've elected ourselves chief nuclear weapons monitor, and are we all that? Who knows? I don't know. It's complicated. The thing about complex morality is, of course, that there are no easy answers, and satisfying drama, gives voice to them, but doesn't necessarily seek to give answers, because I think the harsh reality is that there are a lot of contradictions within our morality, and we have to navigate those as best we can, and sometimes acknowledge that there are difficult questions to which we might not have answers, or which actually show our morality to be perhaps not all that we think it is, which keeps us on our toes. I think that's all you can do is stay on your toes and be aware. I think what the Daleks don't do that good humans do is that the Daleks are certain. They're the ones you've got to be careful of. The ones who are certain, because they're the ones who don't bend. And the ones who don't bend are the ones who will do anything. I think that's the lesson, and it's a lesson we need today as much as any other. But look, Genesis of the Daleks is very good, and out of something good must come something evil. And that's Doctor Who Twitter occasionally. But I thoroughly enjoyed that. I'm so over the moon that David Quantick has contributed. I'm sure you know his work. You don't need to seek it out. But if it's a chance for him to plug his book, then I'm delighted. I'm really thrilled that he's been on this podcast. I'm delighted that you're listening. Please come again when I will be perhaps having a more difficult job extolling the virtues of a Doctor Who story, because I found this one pretty easy, apart from a brief sojourn into Clamsville. I found this fairly straightforward, so I'm going to nip off to see if I can go and get Carvel to finish off what he's doing and use the facilities myself. But in the meantime, thanks very much for listening. Thanks for watching, whichever you've chosen to do. Thanks to David Quantick, who I'm going to allow to have the final word to plug his wares. But for now, cheerio.
And yeah, it says here, shamelessly plug anything you have coming up or your online presence. Well, I'm on Twitter, and on Twitter I'll be talking about my forthcoming quiz book, Quantick's Quite Difficult Quiz Book, which contains, I hope, many, many Doctor Who related rounds, including Doctor Who villain or musical instrument. I'm sure you can guess the crossover there. Thank you, Toby. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening to Happy Times and Places, which is presented by me, Toby Hadoke, and my special guest this time around is David Quantick, who can be found on Twitter @Quantick, and whose book has just been released, so please do check it out. I am very, very grateful to the patrons who make these podcasts possible, and they include Mark Aldridge, Kit Allen, Sebastian April, Tilt Ariza, Simon Ash, Richard Alt, Lung Baramus Banks, James Blackett, Robin Bland, Kyle Bors, David Brody, Nigel Bromley, Hugh Buchtman, Anthony Carroll, Ruben Herfindahl, Peter Burns, Peter Harness, Rob Leonard, Stephen Moffat, Richard Straw, Barry Platt, Darren Mackay, Joe Llewellyn, Ian Key, Jason Gorman, Chris Bone, and Chris Dunford-Kelk. The music for these podcasts is by Dave Gates, and the artwork by Dylan Patterson. Well, listen up, if you enjoy these and you would like to contribute to the making of them, you can go to patreon.com/Toby Hadoke. You get special material, advance releases, my eternal thanks, and other goodies are available. Tiers start from as little as £3 a month, and even then, you can get a 10% discount if you sign up for a year. You can also go to ko-fi.com/Toby Hadoke if you just want to throw in a one-off donation every now and again. If there's been a particular podcast you've enjoyed or a particular fluff that you've liked that I've left in because it's the end of a very long session and I want to prove that I'm not a robot and I can't identify traffic lights or boats in a mosaic square, but I can occasionally make a hash of saying simple words that I've said many times before. A sensible person would actually just keep the same pluggage, because I'm sure everyone stops listening as soon as they hear Patreon. They go, "God, not this again," and switch off. So I should just record it once and then pop it at the end of each one. But this, I don't know, this just makes me feel alive. And you know what would make me feel even more alive? Not that you should have any need so to do, but go on. If you want to do an old man a favour, go to your podcast supplier, and particularly to iTunes. I think that's where it really helps. And rate these things 5 stars. And also leave some nice reviews wherever you can, because it just helps to tickle my algorithms. And as I said, I'm an old man. They need particularly vigorous tweaking at my age. There's another fluff which actually would have did ruin just quite a nice little roundup that I was doing there. So now it's descended into more waffle once again. So you could just make a donation to have me euthanized. It would probably do the world a favour, but I've got quite a few Doctor Who stories to get through, so that's something I might actually die during one of these. That's worth getting the heads up on. So but who would record the plugs at the end? They've probably got a million files with variations of this, although this is the one with the most mistakes and most unnecessary waffle, which actually this is. I'm going to stop now. Money and approval, those are the two things. Those are the two things that give me sucker. So please sucker away. Goodness me, I thought that music would never come. I mean, I could have shut up earlier and just brought the music cue forward. But anyway, go to Excess Malarkey Comedy Club in Manchester on a Tuesday night at 8 p.m. or online, first Sunday of every month at twitch.tv/Excess Malarkey. I don't even always talk about Doctor Who. What do you mean? That's all you want me to do? That's the only thing you're interested in? I'm a person, you know. There's more to me than Time Lords and scarves. But you don't care. Okay, well, fine. Well, thanks. But if you wanted to, Excess Malarkey. It's a really good comedy club. It's been going 24 years. Funny people on it. Yeah. Thanks. I actually got a letter from John Gleeson during lockdown. We mostly talked about the Seeds of Doom, to be honest, but very nice of him.